I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset.
So I want to welcome today to Pro Mindset Podcast a very special lady. She's from the Dallas Metroplex, Mary McKay. Mary, you've been in the sports marketing world for a long time. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Okay, Mary. So let's dive into what has been your role in the sports world, especially around the Cowboys, ever since back when they were winning Super Bowls in the 90s.
So my entree into the sports world was while I was working at Sears, actually, and back in '84. So I've been around a long time. And at that point, Sears was the only outlet. There was no such thing as Ticketmaster. There was no such thing as a sports marketing company. None of that existed. And we wanted to hire Walter Payton as our spokesperson. So every place we all called, everybody quoted us a different price because there had only been Joe Green and just a few other people, Joe Namath, that had done any commercials. And, of course, OJ with Hertz Cars.
Sure.
So everybody quoted us a different price. And it was all over the board, down to NFL Films. So when we hired Walter, and I was able to learn NFL Films, NFLPA, NFL, Chicago Bears, all of the different areas that have to be compensated on a deal, I laughed with everybody at work and I said, I just got a PhD in sports management, which did not exist.
Exactly.
And we ended up paying Walter Payton that year more than he made playing football in the NFL with Chicago Bears. But we had an incentive-based endorsement that was related to training inside of Sears, internal as well as external. And it really kind of changed the market because the market had only seen previously the Joe Namath and them pushing one product, not pushing healthy lifestyle or what it takes to succeed, which is, at that time, Sears was the number one retailer. And we wanted Walter to go and speak on our behalf and talk about why satisfaction guaranteed or your money refunded would any company put their neck on the line with that, which is what he did every game that he ever played in the NFL.
No doubt about it.
He went out there and gave his fans satisfaction guaranteed. Only the fans didn't get their money refunded if he lost the game.
Well, let me start over, Mary, and do you the intro that you deserve.
Okay.
So we have a young lady that is a pioneer in the sports marketing world that worked with the likes of Walter Payton, Hall of Famer, rest in peace. And you were at the cutting edge of connecting the fans, the general population, sports figures, and products or services.
Absolutely.
That had to start somewhere, and you were right in the middle of it.
Yes, I was.
So I apologize for not giving you the due introduction you deserved. So now let's talk about Walter Payton. What did you learn about Walter Payton in your time dealing with him? What made him special?
What made Walter special is he did not think he was special. Walter believed until the very day he passed away. He believed that you got out of bed every day as if you were a rookie and it was your first day on the clock, and you proved yourself every single day of your life. And then you encouraged others while you were pushing yourself for those that just don't have that daily instinct that you've got to be the best you can be every single day.
So Walter's mindset was he had a very humble perspective of who he was and how hard he needed to work to do what he did.
Extremely humble. Extremely. And he never put himself, regardless of his talent, above daily workouts and protections, both mentally as well as physically, from injuries. His stretching was as encouraging on a daily basis as it was having a cup of coffee. It was just natural for him.
So from your experience with him, he had a routine where he did a lot of things that other players at that point in time probably didn't even think about doing.
Right. And they had no reason to, because you had no enforcements back then. You had no curfews back then. None of that existed in the world of sports.
The money wasn't as big as it is now, where people had so much more to lose. They have so much more to lose today than they did back then. You know, ownership and the whole league being a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's such big business that everybody today has a mindset of, I got to maximize my years. I got to take care of my body. I got to take care of my mind. I have to take care of everything so that I can play as long as I possibly can. Back then, it wasn't like that.
No, back then, I mean, they were smoking on the sidelines.
Right.
So down on the field, they were having cigarettes while playing the game. And everything was acceptable back then. Nobody challenged. So people like Walter were an anomaly back then, that he took it that serious.
Well, it showed up on the field too. I mean, he was obviously the all-time rushing leader until Emmitt, I think, broke his record towards the end of his career. So in addition to working hard and having like an extra gear compared to all the other guys that played in his generation, what else did you see about Walter that maybe other players didn't have? What mental aspect did he have that other guys didn't have?
His nickname was Sweetness because he genuinely was a kind man, and he genuinely cared and was always trying to lift up the other players that transcended time. And one of the greatest honors you can give to a player in this day and age is he win the Walter Payton Man of the Year award at Super Bowl.
Absolutely. There's one nominee by every team, and there's only one winner, and it's that guy that emulates what Walter did, which is great community service.
Which his family, Connie, Jarrett, and Brittany, his children, they still continue to this very day. They live what he lived. And they still feed more homeless people in the Chicago area every year than any other current player.
Wow. So when did you make the jump from corporate America to being into the sports management marketing world?
That is a funny story in itself. I actually left Sears and came down to Dallas, Texas, with a motivational speaker by the name of Zig Zigler, because I had licensed his products and put Walter Payton's face on them. And Zig said, I don't understand how I'm making all this money, but if you ever decide to leave Sears, come down to Dallas and create a licensing company for me. And I did. In doing that, we were producing the success seminars that were nationwide and then ended up ultimately going worldwide with the top leaders in the world. And here in Dallas, Texas, at one of the success seminars where we had 40,000 people a day show up for motivation, we were in the green room, and this player by the name of Emmitt Smith, who was new to the Dallas Cowboys and one of the star running backs in the NFL was coming to speak on stage next to Zig Zigler, Barbara Bush, Colin Powell, Larry King. And I am sitting in the green room at the Dallas Reunion Arena, and Barbara Bush and Secret Service come running in, and this is 1995. They come running in with all of these footballs. Colin Powell, who is basically one of the greatest leaders of the country, is there, and he's got all of this merchandise to be signed. Larry King has it, and I'm saying to myself, are you kidding me? He is a football player, and the world leaders, especially in the United States, are here to get autographs from a football player instead of just the opposite.
It shows the lack of priorities in our country right there.
Oh, my God. I was having a heart attack. Well, Emmitt Smith comes walking in, and Walter had been telling him, you need to talk to Mary McKay because she's down there in Dallas. She does this for my career. And I just sat back, and I pushed myself to the back of the room, Craig, and I was like, this is not happening to me. This is not happening. Secret Service is getting things signed, and Emmitt's signing for the President of the United States.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is incredible. And Emmitt said, Mary, if you ever decide to leave Zig, come over and work with me. This has been fun. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I will definitely come over and work for you. I thought I was working for the people who could draw the biggest crowd in the United States. I didn't realize it was football.
Wow.
And then I went to work with Emmitt.
Okay, so let's pause for a moment, and before we talk about Emmitt, the Super Bowls, the fun in Dallas, let's go back to Zig Ziglar.
Okay.
Okay, Zig is one of my favorites. Back, God knows how many years ago, I used to listen to cassette tapes of his motivational talks.
100%. I did too.
And his legacy lives today.
Yes, his son Tom is still running his company.
Yeah, and it's still effective, and it's still meaningful, it's still impactful. The messages haven't changed. They've withstood the test of time. But the Zig the man, what was it about him that set him apart from everyone else?
Zig, when he spoke to you, whether it was through a cassette tape. Zig stayed at the 7th grade level of communication, and he took pride in that because he never wanted to speak above anyone. He always wanted to speak where it was easy to communicate without realizing you were having a formal conversation. That's a lot of words, but it's really powerful. He was able to talk to your soul, and that's because he genuinely cared who you were and how you got where you are.
Well, the thing I didn't respond when you first said that because I was full of emotion, and I was trying to get my arms around what I was feeling, which was when I've had the most success, I do the same thing. You don't, even though you have a law degree or you have this or that, when you talk to people almost like a peer-to-peer level where you're being real with them, whether it's a player, whether it's a team, whether it's a coach, whether it's a head coach and everybody else in the world's putting them up on a pedestal, and you're talking to them like, hey, you guys are the same. We're the same. We put our pants on the same. I think that is a very powerful way to communicate.
It's the only way to communicate. Otherwise, you are strictly talking, and talking is not communicating.
Agree.
The first thing you and I did when you called today was catch up on how our families were. Your priorities, Craig, as well as Teddy's, have always been family and God first. That is so simple to do when it's natural to you.
Yep.
And along with that comes being genuine. And I've met not every, but a lot of sports marketing agents as well as sports marketing managers. I've watched people, I saw LeBron James from day one and before anybody else had ever heard of him. And the same with Dak Prescott. But they have something special and unique that other people don't have. They genuinely care.
Yep. Okay, well, let's jump into Emmitt Smith and everything related to what you did with him and how you developed his brand and how that led to other opportunities with Cowboys.
So Emmitt is unique, as Walter is. And if you break down anybody who's extremely successful, they're going to have the unique qualities and characteristics of wanting to be the very best. So I say that because working with Emmitt, when I said, okay, we need to do endorsements, but I don't care about most of them that are calling in. That means nothing to me because, Emmitt, the bottom line is here, you are nothing to me but inventory. And what I mean by inventory, all you have are a few days a year as well as specific times that you are available to me to work with a product and actually put your heart and soul. So what do you want to learn about in your career once you retire? What are you passionate about? His passion was electronics and real estate. And he loved cars, but is that a passion, Emmitt, or just something you enjoy? So it was electronics, real estate. I'm like, okay, let's focus on that. So what about electronics fascinates you? Anything that fascinates you that usually comes because you have a need. His need was to protect his brand. There were so many people out there selling fake Emmitt Smith autographs that he wanted to learn about RFID, radio frequency, because he wanted to be able to track his signature from the very day he signed all the way through the process to prove that merchandise that was being sold under his name was fake because it did not have the RFID chip in it. So I said, perfect. I know how we can make this work. I don't know how to get you paid yet, but I'm going to figure this out. So I went over to a company, Texas Instruments, who happens to be headquartered in Dallas, Texas. And I met with the CEO and the head of marketing, and I said, what is your biggest pain point? What do you as a manufacturer spend more money on that you seem to not have control when it comes to new products? And they said, our biggest problem is having to pay late fees for not coming in on time with a product. I said, what product currently do you have that you are budgeting for late fees that you're going to have to pay? And at that time, it was a technology DLP. So I went back and I talked to Emmitt. I said, you want to learn about DLP? These guys also work with RFID. He said, I just want to learn it all. So I went back and I cut a deal with Texas Instruments for Emmitt to be able to go to Texas Instruments on his day off for 6 hours every Tuesday and work inside the DLP division at no money to Emmitt whatsoever, but they were anticipating a $20 million fine for not coming in on time. And if I was able to get, if Emmitt was able, I'm not able, if Emmitt was able to get that to come in on time, we wanted a % of the savings. And I'm going to tell you, it was they came in on time with the product, and it was six figures, that Emmitt made while learning about the product at the same time. But those developers, the technology people, there were only 8 of them in the entire company working on that product. So those are the types of endorsements that I did with Emmitt, and he started an RFID company called WeTrack that has since been named Prova, and he started the first authentication of signature tracking in the NFL. When Emmitt broke the all-time NFL rushing record, he changed his uniform every quarter so that we would have 4 sets of full uniforms, helmets included, that we would be able to auction off for charities in the future through the Pat and Emmitt Smith charities. The next day after he broke the record, on eBay were his game-worn uniforms on eBay, which definitely were not his. That's when we got the attention of the NFL and Ben Nix, and they went after eBay. I ended up speaking with Meg Whitman directly, who was the CEO, and we found the fraud, which he was selling those for $10,000 on eBay, and they were total frauds because we had already chipped all of Emmitt's merchandise, and it was in the locker room at the Cowboys.
Wow.
So ours were authentic, theirs were fake. They went to jail, and we were very happy with Emmitt being so strong to protect his brand. We ended up selling and auctioning off for charity 2 of his full uniforms, and we raised $75,000 for the kids' charities here in Dallas, Texas with those.
And the other 2, one's probably in Canton, Ohio?
Yes, Canton has one when he went into the Hall of Fame. And the other one he has at home, and that's for his children.
That is so cool.
Yes.
Well, it shows a lot of foresight on his part to do 4 uniforms and helmets and everything. And then also, we all aspire to do something that has a legacy that might live beyond us.
I agree.
Emmitt's career's over. He's not going to get to carry the ball anymore. But he did not only left a legacy with his performance and his championships, but he also left a business legacy in terms of finding a way to authenticate and eradicate counterfeit apparel.
Exactly.
Right?
100%. And he, 100% of that credit, and to Emmitt and to me, that was equally as important to him as breaking the rushing record. Because, still to this day at home, I work with video gamers, football players. Can I call and get the usual suspects and the usual endorsements? Absolutely. How is that going to benefit them beyond money? There's so many different endorsements like that I've done in trucking, in everything, because a lot of the guys want to buy into a trucking company to help get their family members working. Well, then let's get an endorsement and work with them and help the trucking company get the value of your celebrity status while you're learning the trade. And that's how I work. Tony Romo, when he was sitting on the bench with the Dallas Cowboys, and I found out he was full-blooded Hispanic, I about had a heart attack. I've never been so excited about anything news in my life. And I ran down to AT&T. They were trying to find a way to break into the Hispanic community better in Texas, and I'm like, we got the answer, and he sits on the bench at the Dallas Cowboys. And we cut a deal before anybody had ever heard of Tony Romo. Before he ever played in the game, I got him his first endorsement, sitting on the bench just because he was Hispanic. And then, fortunately, after we signed 2 weeks later, he started playing. And he was thrilled with his deal. His agent was absolutely furious with me because the agent wasn't paying attention prior to that. But once he came off that bench, everybody wanted a piece of Tony Romo, but nobody wanted the Tony Romo on the bench. I want the Tony Romo that sat on the bench. That's the guy I want to talk to.
That is super cool. Share with our listeners some of the other interesting marriages that you've put together between an athlete and a company that wasn't just go show up, sign autographs, or endorse the product.
Jason Witten and Albertsons, the grocery chain in Dallas. Now, that looks like your standard, typical endorsement, that it's just a grocery store getting behind Jason Witten. That is not what it was to Jason. Jason, he went after them because they were equally involved passionately with the National Center for Domestic Violence Prevention, which is what Jason's charity is all about, domestic violence. So even though it looks like it's just a commercial promoting a grocery chain, it is not. He wanted to get involved and make a change in the movement for domestic violence and bring it inside the NFL. Albertsons was national, and it gave him that platform. I did that original contract with him and Albertsons to support his foundation, down to the women's shelters for the turkeys at Thanksgiving. All of that went to his passion of helping abused women and children. And
That's
it sounds typical, but it helped fund his foundation, and it still does to this very day. He is still with them 17 years later.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've only talked about, and I'm not trying to be a name dropper here, but we've talked about Tony Romo, and most people have heard of him. I'm joking. Jason Witten. We've talked about Walter Payton. What is the common denominator when you start looking at the top 10 people that you've ever worked with that just happen to be athletes? What's the common thread with the top 10?
Family. LeBron James, you put him right in the middle of that as well. LeBron had an extremely rough childhood coming up. He wanted to help and protect other women and families going through what he went through as a child. And his lifesaver was a woman, Alexandria Boone, who got him at the age of 12, not because he was an athlete, but because he was so kind to her daughter and helped him while he was in St. Mary's in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. And it was all about family. He wanted to help his mom. He wanted to help those kids. He knew he had hope that he was going to be able to get out if he kept his grades up and kept working. He wanted to reach back and help what he considered family, and that was the other underserved children with him in that community, and they are now his entire marketing team and management team.
That's awesome. Okay, so if you're sitting there talking to a 20, 21, 22-year-old young man who has an opportunity to play professional sports, let's say he's going into the 2020 NFL draft, or he's going into basketball draft, NBA, whatever it may be, with all the wisdom and experience that you've had helping athletes and seeing the impact they've been able to have on the community, on their friends and family, and even on their own career. Give like the things you need to make sure you do if you want to make an impact.
The first thing I tell them, I could care less what you do on the field. I cannot help you there in any way, shape, or form, nor do I give a darn. I don't care if you're fast. I don't care if you're good. Who are you as a human being? Who are you? What do you want to be your legacy? How can I help you get there off the field? On the field is going to be, you know the drill there. You've been raised by coaches. You've had trainers. But who in the heck are you? And why are you? And why should I waste my time with you? I ask, and they look at you kind of funny. I asked Dak Prescott that way before he was drafted with the Cowboys. We were at the Doak Walker Awards in Fort Worth. He was a junior at that time in college. And I said, I could care less what you do. I don't even care what college you go to. Who are you? And what motivates you? He answered it so simply. He said, I'm getting my degree in educational psychology because I grew up watching my older brother, who is by far the best athlete I have ever seen in my entire life, naturally. He just didn't get it. He did not get the gene to compete, and he has no desire to. So I grew up watching everybody scout him, and he could still go out there today and play better than anybody else in the NFL. But I want to know, how can I motivate myself and other people that are in his situation to help them make a decision to do better on the field. I looked at him. I said, Dak, when you graduate, what are you going to graduate with? And he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, my master's degree. I said, Dak Prescott, I'm going to do everything in my power to stay in touch with you, everything, because you have just impressed me more than anybody that I've talked to inside the NFL. I said, you're going to make it, and I'm going to talk about you, and people are going to make fun of me. And I said, I pray to God someday you're with any team that deserves you. And then when he landed here in Dallas, I about had a heart attack and was blessed to work with him a little bit, not on any endorsements. We tried that in the beginning, but he wasn't interested. He only wanted to stay focused on the field. I've sat with many a kid and talked with them prior to going in the NFL. LeBron James before he went in the NBA. And it's all about family. Zach did get his NBA. And that to me says a lot. There's not a lot of NFL players currently or previous that had their NBA while playing in the NFL.
Well, and he's done a heck of a job with the Cowboys, and he's going to get rewarded handsomely sometime in the next few months. And, you know, he's the face of the America's team and all that stuff. So his character is reflected in his success. I mean, a lot of times successful people have tremendous character, and that's definitely the case with him.
And you pray they do. And a lot of them, unfortunately, they take it internally, and they start believing their own PR. And that's when I know we've lost them. When they start believing what other people are saying about them, be it good or be it bad, that's when a player turns. That player has to believe in himself from the inside out first and stick with it. And
very well
again,
said.
He's got to have faith.
Who are some of the other athletes that you've worked with over the years that come to mind that are special people?
Jordan Lewis. I work with him currently. Jordan Lewis is all about family. In fact, he has a new baby girl. Jordan is not part of the crowd of going out and night clubbing. He's a sponge that wants to learn everything he can learn. His passion is helping kids get out of the underserved areas academically, physically, and mentally. He's a phenom with his camps in Detroit, and he's relentless. The amount of money that comes out of his pocket for his camps, that every kid gets full cleats, gets full jerseys, they get every piece of gloves, every ounce of equipment that they need to play sports, which is all pro bono. The food sessions that he has is all about health and nutrition to keep your body so it's able to compete. He runs the full gamut with those kids, and we have kids as young as 4 years old in those camps. And they still have to sit before they eat. They can smell and see the food. They have to sit through the nutrition course. And it's cute. But he's about giving back to the underserved area and helping people in the underserved areas come up and get out. He's a phenom like that. You're never going to see him out night clubbing. It's not his thing. But you are going to see him with his family and playing video games.
Well, a lot of times players that are like what you just described, Jordan, to be like, the success on the field naturally takes place, and then they get to have even more of an impact down the road.
Yes. This year, I mean, he never showed up on the depth chart. He showed up on the roster, but never on the depth chart. I still haven't figured that part out. But his smile, when he made a play in the game, his smile came through, his personality showed. And it was all about, hey, we're all in this together. We all play for the NFL. Even if it's the other team, I'm going to do my job and get the ball away from you. But doesn't mean anything against you as a person. I wish you all the best. But we want to win, too. Other players, Patrick Cobb, who went on to play for Miami. Roy Williams, that came from OU. Roy's a phenom. He's another one. His safety net foundation, taking care of single women and children, which he still does to this day. How strict his program is there. But he gets the women out in the workforce, and he went around. He did more recruiting in Oklahoma and Dallas for all of us people to get behind him. And he would tell us, this woman right here, she needs a job and a mentor. You're going to take her. And by golly, we did. But all the women got jobs and careers.
That's excellent.
Players recruiting off the field to help those who need help.
Okay, Mary McKay, looking at your history before the world of sports, your entree into the world of sports through Sears, and then your time at working with Zig Zigler, one of the most famous motivational speakers in the world, and then working with individual athletes and having your own company. What has been the most rewarding to you? What did you, like when you look back on your career and you go, man, that was so much fun? What would you say it was and why?
Rewarding, and I'm going to use another player, Chad Hennings, to define that. Chad Hennings was in the Air Force prior to coming to the Dallas Cowboys. Chad Hennings wanted to have a post-career in real estate and motivational speaking. Watching Chad Hennings speak before a room and how much time and training he put into public speaking from 15 years ago to today is nothing but a pleasure, and just it thrills me to no end to see how happy he is following his passion and the smile that comes across his face when I run into him on the street. Because his post-career is as rich and satisfying to him as his playing days. Tony Dorsett, the same thing. When you see him and a smile comes across their face, because you weren't there to get an autograph, you were there to help change their life.
Where's Chad living? Is he still in Dallas?
He is in Dallas. He owns a commercial real estate company, Rubicon, and he has survived the commercial real estate thieving, and it's as bad as sports. And he has survived and stayed a man of character all the way through. And his team that he has with him, they're thrilled. They are very thrilled to be working there because the environment is laid back, but don't think it's relaxed. Get out there and get the job done, but be the best you can be. And he's just doing great.
All right, Mary, what is the most rewarding thing for you outside of your career?
My family. Working with my son, starting a company inside of sports, helping to organize recreational activities when we started the company. It all started because he was a father and became a T-ball manager, and they handed him all this Excel paperwork, and he printed T-shirts for the kids, and the names were spelled wrong, and it was because he couldn't read the handwriting, because a lot of the kids' parents did not write in English. And I said, so we're in a recession. You're smart. You're technical. Build the software and fix it for registration. And that's as simple as I thought it was. And then it turned into the UIL and managing and partnering with Children's Health Hospitals. And he realized that it wasn't just a database. It was an accumulation of a child's career all the way from first grade on. And here's my health records. So if they decide to go into any activity beyond, they have everything organized for a coach can still see game film from 3 years ago. And it's organized. And the parents love it because all the medical information is there if the child gets hurt in any activity. Everything's there right on the spot to be treated. So changing lives and saving lives is what he's become about. And I'm very proud of him. And he's done that on his own.
That's awesome. Once you have kids, you realize that anything your kids do is exponentially more rewarding to you as a parent than it is to them as a performer.
I agree.
And so I think, even like when you look at sports and you have proud moms and dads out there watching their kids, or they're disappointed because their kid didn't achieve what he or she was hoping to do, it's also exponentially more disappointing for the parent.
I agree 100%.
And you can't comprehend that until you have kids and your kids are in that age where they're doing things and they've worked hard, trained hard, all those type of things, and they start experiencing disappointments, and you're disappointed more than they are.
Yep. That's exactly right. And you hurt. You hurt for them.
You do. So at one point in time, I had a couple people working with me that didn't have kids, and they couldn't understand why parents were so, excited and enamored with what was going to happen to their son with respect to the NFL. You just tell them, just wait until you guys have kids, because then you'll realize it, because it hits you.
To say that you even played and were drafted by the NFL, you're still in a class of your own.
Very rare. Very improbable.
Yep. And then stayed. Those that are able to make it past the 2.5 years.
Yeah. When you look at an NFL player's career, you're not involved with the coaching and the on-the-field stuff. You're all involved with the image.
I could care less.
I get it. From your dealing with NFL players over the years, what is the thing that sabotages a player's career the most? Because
not being on time.
Not
being respectful of others. When you have a player who believes he is better than the people he's going to meet, and he's late. And I'll use an example. I had a friend of mine that said I needed to work with this Cowboy player by the name of Joseph Randall. And Joseph Randall and I were scheduled to meet in my office, and he was 2.5 hours late for our meeting. He walked in to the office, and he said, "No apology for being late." When I said, "I don't have an appointment with you now. I had an appointment 2.5 hours ago." He said, "Well, I had other things I had to get done. I'm here now, aren't I?" And I said, "Oh, that's cute. That's really smart." I said, "How about you just get the heck out of here and don't come back?" And then he got in trouble for shoplifting and shoplifting underwear. And so he went and did an endorsement with an underwear company. Me Undies was the name of the brand, and thought that was funny. And the people he was getting his advice from thought it was funny. Joseph is currently in jail, serving, I think he got 28 months for domestic violence and shoplifting, and is still sitting in jail today.
Wow.
And the NFL will never let him back in.
Which NFL team is your favorite team? Are you a Cowboys fan, or you don't have a team?
No, I have a team. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I'm definitely a Cowboys fan, born and raised in Kansas City. And my family's Kansas City Chiefs diehards. So I was absolutely following the Chiefs since, well, especially they won the Super Bowl. But my favorite team is still going to go back to Jerry Jones. Talk about somebody who's passionate.
Oh, he wants to get back. He wants to get back to the show for sure. Let's go to the Chiefs in Kansas City and your background. Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school at Winnetonka High School in North Kansas City.
I'll be darned. Well, I'm from Atchison, which is about 45 to 50
I know
minutes.
exactly where it is.
Yeah. And I went to law school at UMKC and went to undergrad at University of Kansas and lived in Kansas City for about 5 years after college, studying I did. So.
Well, you're definitely, you know what it's like to live there. You become a Chiefs fan.
You do. And they've had some really good teams. They just kept losing every time they got in the playoffs. It didn't matter if Schottenheimer was a coach, Vermeil was a coach. It didn't matter. And Andy Reid has finally figured it out. And obviously their quarterback's pretty special. But I think if people really get to know Patrick Mahomes, he's a special guy.
Well, he's on my bucket list of players that I want to get to know. May not ever work with him, but I'm fascinated by him.
He's a rare guy. I mean, his positivism, his ability to come from behind, his attitude. When the playoffs, they were down 10, 24, 17. I'm not sure I got all those numbers right, but it was incredible. Everybody thinks you're going to lose, and you got the whole world looking at you and watching you to be able to stay positive and bring your people back, lead your people back. And he did it. It was amazing.
Because he doesn't see himself in that game as losing. He sees it and takes it personally as a challenge to get back.
Yep.
So unemotionally is how he plays ball. He plays ball like an athlete because he's been down before and he knows what it's like to make a comeback, and he knows when the momentum catches up with the comeback, they're going to win.
Yep, he does.
He doesn't have that gloom and doom. That was the only thing that drove me crazy about Tony Romo. When they'd start losing, Tony started losing.
Well, Tony's body language was consistent with the scoreboard, where Mahomes,
100%,
right? And Mahomes' body language is irrespective of the scoreboard.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, Mary, thank you so much for your time today. I learned some things that I didn't know, which is always kind of fun. I appreciate your energy, your contribution to the sports world. You and Teddy crossed paths several times over the years, and you've been
she's wonderful.
You've been a great mentor to her, and I just want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. 5 stars, of course. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.